Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Market Talk. Today we are joined by Tracy Kohl, who's the founder and CEO of 21Blox's, a new concept providing business opportunities for chefs in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also joined by Colin Lacey, who is the Vice President and Managing Director of Merrychef, the high-speed oven manufacturer in the UK. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Tracy, I thought we'd start with you and finding out a little bit about the concept that you've launched this week. Just to begin with, I think I'm right in saying you've spent the last 20 years as an executive chef in the luxury yacht market. So what can you tell us about that? You must have seen a lot of the world.
Yes, it was a wonderful experience. It's very taxing. A lot of long hours, a lot of sacrifices have to be made, but I wouldn't have given it up. It was a wonderful learning experience, met some really interesting people, went to some really wonderful places. So very blessed.
Sure. So you're kind of back on land now, as it were. This week you've launched your new concept, which is 21Blox's. Do you want to give us an overview of really what that is and what the motivation was behind the launch?
Oh gosh, there's a big box to unpack. The motivation behind it was I've actually come here on a startup tier 1 visa, which the government gives out to people who, with a good business plan to create jobs and opportunities within the UK. I was actually in America at the time when COVID struck. And so I was getting the American viewpoints of the COVID pandemic, and a lot of focus was put on New York. And it was stunning to me that, that New York was shut down, and people within a week were queuing up at food banks without any food, and most of them from the hospitality industry. And, it was kind of thinking about there's got to be a better way for people in hospitality to be better prepared for every crisis that strikes, because hospitality is always one of the first places that get affected. We basically a luxury service as well as something a bit more functional. If people don't have money, they can't spend money on luxury items like food, restaurants. So there has to be a better way for restaurateurs or people who work in the industry to earn a better living wage for themselves.
Yeah, so how do chefs and restaurants then sign up to the platform, and what does that give them then?
All right, so basically I can't go into too much because I haven't really discussed this interview with a lot of the investors, but what we do is we take chefs who have a concept but don't have any investment to put down for them to start their own ideas. And especially in this particular market, I believe there's not a lot of investors out there who are contributing to new concepts. So we invest in them in a variety of ways, and we give them the opportunity to be the best that they can possibly be in their concept, with a limited amount of input. And what we hope to achieve is that within 1 to 3 years, that they have the opportunity of actually having their own restaurant. And how we plan to do that is we plan to take our investment, invest it in our chefs, and then after a period of 1 to 3 years, the top performers will then will reinvest money into the top performers and give them a share of their own actual restaurant for them to run their own way. So it's really just this process of taking an investment and then letting it just keep feeding itself over and over and trying to benefit as many people as possible in the process.
Brilliant stuff. We'll come back to you in a minute, but I'll just bring Colin into the conversation now. Another good news story. We like these, but Merrychef has made a big investment in your Sheffield factory. So can you just kind of talk us through that and what's behind that, really?
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. It's a wonderful piece of news against the current background that we're still in, although we know we have a roadmap to reopening. But there's clearly been a lot of doom and gloom, and it was a very mixed year last year for Merrychef, in the sense of we had the shock of Q2 where everything suddenly stopped, and we, like a lot of other companies, experienced a kind of a shock to the system and had to furlough the factory for a few weeks. But actually, because our exports are so significant now, and we're not entirely, reliant on the UK economy, a lot of the world didn't stop in quite the same way. It was interesting to hear what Tracy said about New York. I mean, New York shut down, but the rest of America was behaving as if there was nothing wrong. And of course, various parts of the world were coming through the pandemic at various stages, and some of them dealt with it extremely well, some of them not so well. But we saw demand actually kick back in July, which was, fantastic. I mean, that was literally the last time we furloughed anyone out of the factory was back in July. And from that, it just grew and grew and grew because I think Merrychef technology, because it's fast, because it's small footprint, because it's very easy to use, allowed a lot of people to suddenly switch to delivery, to takeout, to kind of queue busting scenarios. We didn't have long lines of people waiting to collect food because we could do it quickly, and a lot of our customer base also operate things like drive-throughs where speed is important. We all saw some of the stories of queues down the road for a mile trying to get into drive-throughs because they were still allowed to operate. So, it really changed the whole outlook for us for the rest of the year and has actually grown very steadily since then. And Q4 of 2020 was our second highest ever on record. We've had a few big kind of rollouts and successes in the past, but we were not surprised, but obviously pleasantly delighted with that. And we saw that trend continuing. And we're part of Built, which is, a global company, and they're hugely supportive of the Merrychef brand, the factory we have in Sheffield, where we now employ over 220 people, and that's continuing to grow. And we went to them and said, look, we need to put some more equipment, some more laser cutting equipment in to keep up with the demand. And they said yes within 24 hours, actually. It's the fastest CapEx decision I've ever seen passed in my career. So we invested in a brand new laser punch. So we already have two of them. So this was number 3. Very high tech, highly efficient equipment, but it allows us to increase our volume of what we call fabrication. So cutting, and then we've got some robotic equipment in as well that helps us to build the ovens quickly, and then new assembly lines to be able to cope with the additional volume. And I'm delighted to say that trend has continued. So to be able to create 50 plus jobs in the Sheffield area in the midst of a pandemic, and not had to furlough anybody for the for the majority of last year, has just been a fantastic achievement, really, and great for the economy, great as an export success. When I look at the UK, if we'd been totally reliant on the UK economy, our numbers would have been down significantly, because that obviously is still being closed. But I would easily 80% of what we're building today is exported, and all over the world. You name it. There were countries and new customers coming on stream, literally throughout the world, from I think, as I said, from South Korea to Chile to Canada, the US, Australia, UAE, even some of the normal markets that we would have thought, like South Africa, which has not been moving quickly, but they've still managed to find the money to invest in Merrychef equipment. So obviously we're delighted, and hopefully the story will continue.
And Colin, you mentioned there about bringing more people to into work into the factory, up to 50 positions. I mean, how urgent is that? Do you have to get those people in quickly, or are you talking about this happening over a longer term scale?
No, this has been happening quite quickly, actually. We actually started that whole process back in November. What we tend to do is we tend to bring in people on a temporary basis, and when the demand is real, and also when we've had a chance to kind of get to know the people and ensure that this is the right job for them and the right company for them, and equally they're the right people for us, then we convert those positions into permanent positions as we go forward. So, you know, not everybody makes the grade. You know, some people are not suited to the environment. Clearly, lots of people want the job, but we have to be a little bit selective to get the right people who can work, you know, consciously and accurately, but also are reliable. One of the interesting, I call it a paradox actually, is during the pandemic last year, you know, we had some people who were saying, well, you know, I don't want to come into work because I might catch COVID, even though we had massive amounts of, you know, additional spacing done and you know, protective kind of sectioning off of the factory and, you know, not using all of our canteen areas, as well as all the hand sanitation and masks and face coverings and so on. You know, some people were nervous about that. And of course, when they had a furlough scheme that could allow them to get up to 80% of their wages and stay at home, incur commuting costs, it was quite interesting at times, the way, you know, we really had to kind of say to people, look, there's a job for you here. We need you. Please make sure you up. Yeah, one of the interesting challenges. You wouldn't have expected it, no. But, you know, it's one that we had to kind of manage through last year.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, on the subject of employment opportunities, to come back to you, Tracy, obviously that's what you're trying to do with your concept is create opportunities again for chefs that are trying to get back on their feet from the pandemic. Do you want to give us an example of how a chef would engage with you? Say they're interested in working with you and the concept. What's the next step for them?
Well, if they go to our website, which is www.21blox's.com, we've got a survey on there at the moment. We're also looking for a specific type of person to invest in. We're looking for people who are dedicated, who are ambitious, talented, they have integrity, they want to be empowered, and they want to succeed. These are the people that our program is going to benefit. So we have a survey online, which is where we try and get the right demographics, and then we're going to have a round table, a chef round table with a selected few people towards the end of March, where we will discuss our concept with them and get their feedback about the concept to see if there's any improvements that we can make before we move forward with them. Especially being somebody who's not from the UK, it's vital that I manage to actually speak to the very people we want to help, because obviously I've got a different perspective to what people in the UK actually have of the current situation. So yeah, if they just go to the website and contact us through there, there's either a form to fill out or they can go through the survey, leave us their details, and we will definitely be in touch with them.
Okay.
Great stuff. So has there been interest so far, and has that been from a particular sector or a particular type of end user or operator?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's been so incredibly difficult to get anything done. I only arrived here in October last year, so I don't really know anything. Got here and we went into lockdown. So I've literally not been able to do anything other than on a computer or picking up the telephone every now and again. So, so that's been quite difficult. But I have spoken to a lot of industry professionals, not necessarily chefs, and there's been a lot of people with a lot of excitement about the idea and concept. And so now we've only just started to get the marketing out there and to get people headed to the website, because after we found out about the restriction being lifted. I didn't want to make too many rash decisions before then, because there's still that nervousness about the fact that there may still be increases come at the end of the summertime again, you know. So we'll wait and see what's happening. We don't want to rush into anything too soon, but we know that people are out there looking for opportunities and we want to give it to them as soon as possible. Good
stuff. And I believe that this actually tempted you out of retirement. So what prompted you to say, okay, no, this is what I'm going to do, instead of going off on a yacht yourself and enjoying the sunset in some amazing country?
Well, what had happened was last year I had decided to return back to South Africa to open up 2019, to open up a women's wellness centre. And so I was supposed to be heading back to South Africa at the end of this year to go and make that project a reality. And then, of course, COVID struck. And, you know, you never know when something is going to I don't know, you know, knock you off your perch, shall we say. But this whole concept, if you'd asked me this time last year, that I'd be sitting in England having this discussion with you, I would have said, you must be out of your mind. There's no way. What are you talking about? But there you go. You know, something, I had an idea, I wrote it down, I worked on it, and you know, and through the strict regime that you have to go through to actually obtain one of these visas, you know, it's a huge process, an expensive process. You go through accountants and lawyers and everybody, the Home Office checks it all out, and you know, everyone approved it. And so it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now. Retirement can wait because there's more pressing matters. You know, people are needing jobs, and you know, if we get the right team behind us, which I'm sure we're going to, I really feel that we'll be able to make a really positive impact on our environment, on our communities, and keep things local. I mean, that's one of the things we really want to do is make everything British made, you know. So if it's local producers, local manufacturers, we want to sort of focus on British alcohol and wines in our restaurant. If the pandemic didn't teach us anything, you know, with globalization, when those logistical paths break down, you have a couple of issues, you know. So if we can keep things local, and if you can keep your economy in your local community, you're boosting everybody in your community, which means your whole community rises up. And that's really what we want to achieve, you know, which I think everybody does these days. You know, it's no point living in a community that is not doing very well, because it brings everybody in the community down. Yeah.
And the name 21 Blocks, that's linked to the structure, yeah, of the concept.
Yes, well, you know, it's quite funny because it never actually started off as 21 Blocks. Okay. I'd actually wanted to, when the whole concept started coming together, I didn't know where it was going to lead. This was maybe day 1 or 2 of thinking about this, and I thought, well, who would I want around me to do this? What kind of people do we need? And I came up with a bunch of sort of personality requirements, shall we say, or character requirements, or values, or something like that, and came up with the name DATES, which is DAITES, which is what I said just now, you know, determined, talented, ambitious people. And then when I did a little bit of history or research, sorry, I found that that had been trademarked already, and there was something out there like that. And I was like, oh, now what? Now I have to think of it, you know, what am I going to think of? And then I thought, well, you know, there's 21 meals that we can have as human beings in any given week, 7 breakfasts, 7 lunch, 7 dinners. And my birthday falls on the 21st. And I thought, well, that's great, because we can put the 21, we can put the blocks together, because there are those blocks, and it's all connected to food. And so we'll all just tie all of that in together. And so that's where that 21 blocks came from, is that, you know, there's a block for every meal that you have in your daytime.
Okay. Perfect. Great explanation. Colin, to bring you obviously back into the conversation, Wellbuilt released its sort of financial results, 4th quarter ones quite recently. There were some comments in there about momentum beginning to build again in the marketplace. You know, some of the big multiples and chains beginning to buy once again and replace equipment. That's always been a big area of Merrychef's business, sort of multi-site rollouts and people that are using your ovens across numerous sites. What sort of feel do you get that things will return to where they were before the pandemic in the UK from that perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually, and you're right. We released, you know, what I would consider to be very healthy results, actually, for Wellbuilt for last year, and you know, we were all very pleased with how the business kind of navigated through choppy waters, and also started to, you know, as the year went on, things just got steadily better. None of us anticipated that the kind of the COVID lockdown was going to continue too far into this year, and it has continued a bit further than we thought. But definitely, I believe the signs are there that the interest is growing. We've been very fortunate, actually, over the years, both Merrychef, but also most of the other Wellbuilt brands are used in, you know, global quick service restaurants, are used in kind of fine dining but are also used in institutions, in retail, supermarkets, in gas stations, petrol stations, in schools and colleges. So, the great thing for us is that a lot of those segments, while some of them slowed down, they didn't stop completely. And if anything, some of them have kind of woken up earlier and started to make their plans for this year and rolling on. So, companies who plan new store openings have largely tried to continue with that, where they've had, a decent balance sheet or been able to move on that. So, yeah, I'm extremely optimistic that the UK economy will bounce back. I think it's been proven in history that every time we've had a serious pandemic or a serious downturn, that it's been followed by a period of let's not say boom, but certainly a period of more active growth and investment. We've had Brexit in the middle. I won't get started on Brexit, but that's come along. I think Tracy made a great point about the global logistics. That's taught everybody a few lessons about what happens when you get a global logistics crisis and you can't get sea containers out of China and so on. Merrychef has another factory in China, which is quite poignant actually, because we chose to make the investment in Sheffield. And we often have to compete internally within Wellbuilt for investment in our facility, because we've got other brands like Frymaster, Convatherm and so on, who also want access to that money to invest. Producing equipment more locally makes a lot of sense, to the markets that you serve. Of course, it cuts down on the whole environmental impact, but it gives you flexibility. It makes it a lot easier when it comes to importing equipment, as we're seeing, as a result of Brexit that some people are facing. Whereas, we've managed to navigate that very well. And I think overall the sense of optimism that's starting to grow now is palpable. I think a lot of companies will bounce back strong. Look, we're all, even from a private individual, we're all raring to get out there and meet everybody again and enjoy great food and hospitality. Go and stay away in a hotel, whatever it is, we're all desperate to do that. We're just chomping at the bit. Can't wait for, April and then May and then finally 21st of June when it's all released. And, we've got to be optimistic about the future. We've been through probably the biggest crisis I think certainly any of us have ever known business-wise. But human nature is very strong in these things. We will bounce back, and I think, hopefully the hospitality industry, although it's a bit debt laden at the moment, as we know, hopefully once we get past that, the markets will reopen, and we'll all be looking back on what was as, gosh, we survived it. Clearly there's a lot of people who've lost their jobs in all of this that we're really sad about. I hope that as the economy rebounds, and certainly hearing what Tracy's had to say about her initiatives, that those people will find new opportunities. Some people I know have swapped businesses. They've had to. So they've moved from being hospitality people to Amazon delivery drivers. But when the industry opens back up again, if their true passion is back in hospitality, then let's hope that that's where they go. But yeah, I think I think the future looks a lot brighter now, especially now we have a roadmap to the reopening. And let's face it, although the government have not got everything right, they certainly got the vaccination program right in the UK. And to see where we are now compared to the rest of the world, I think Israel is the only country ahead of us. It's fantastic, and we're now the envy of most other nations in that regard. So that can only speed us forward. I see France have just said they're going to allow us into their country now, because obviously clearly we'll be well vaccinated. So all looking very positive, I think.
Yeah, good.
Good stuff. That's probably a really good kind of positive note to end on. We've run out of time for this week, but thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you, Colin, for joining us. And we'll see everybody else again next week for another episode of Market Talk.